We're in a slightly new location right now. My wife is now watching ice dancing on the Olympics, and so she has the primary room where I often do these lectures. And I apologize, you're going to see a reflection in my glasses because the lighting in this room is simply different. But if I don't wear those glasses, I will have difficulty reading my notes. I want to talk about the church office and communication. The church generally has 5 ways to communicate: print, video, websites, social media, telephone and cell phone texting, and of course, people. 5 things always need to be remembered in developing your communication strategy. You want to focus on the purpose of that. You want to identify the audience. You want to articulate your objective. You want to define the key message that you wish to communicate, and you want to determine the details of how to communicate that. Let's take, for example, that you are going to, promote a special offering for a community food bank that your congregation supports. The food bank is running very slim on food and canned goods and frankly money and needs some help. And so you have set a time 3 weeks hence to take up a special offering. That offering is to support what you consider a critical component of your mission, which is to be a support to the community, if you will, to be the best church in the community or for that community. And your purpose is simply to get people to give. Now, you recognize that people do not come every Sunday, or they don't receive all the communications, and so you're going to try to think of ways to communicate with them, but which means you have to identify your audience, and in this case, it is the whole congregation. But there may be different parts of the congregation that are well targeted by different tools. You'll have to understand that. But your objective is simply to have people prepared on that Sunday to bring canned goods or other things that are needed by the food bank, and if necessary, cash as well. In fact, for some people, cash is what they want to give, and so you want to make sure that they understand that they can do that. With that audience, you're going to need certain things depending on your congregation. It may be an email blast, it may be 3 weeks in the bulletin, it may be a special announcement the Sunday before from the pulpit. And then, of course, the details are what we said. Bring canned goods, bring cash. You understand. One of the challenges you're going to face in ministry announcements is that churches have ministry announcement overload. So there has to be some priorities. And one of the priorities is, does the announcement contribute to the church's mission and its strategy for achieving that mission? You want to make sure that those announcements always get the forefront and get the highest priority, that you don't let that disappear in the overload or the avalanche of things that people want to say about bake sales, small group meetings, etc. You also need to preach into announcements. Some things simply need to receive the focus from the pulpit. And in the pulpit, you have an opportunity to give it the context of mission very well, and also to give it a personal touch that is not seen in other communications. And in some churches, if it's not said from the pulpit, most people miss it. Remember that seasonal significance should have priority. Things that are going to happen in the fall are important, but you don't want them to crowd out the things that have to happen in the spring. I think that makes sense. You always want to target the audience for this communication, and you need to match whatever media is necessary, as we listed earlier. And of course, you have to remember that sooner or later, everybody has to have a turn. You can't simply say that some groups get announcements and other groups never get an announcement. Work that out. Actually, communication is not simply a church office function. It also is concerned to the pastor and the staff. I want to share some thoughts from Stuart Manawith, who's a contributor to the website churchexecutive.com. He says communicating effectively is the key to connecting not only with the congregation, but with the staff as well. If the message is not properly delivered, it will be lost, and the method to deliver that message is always changing, and you need to stay alert to that. So let's look at a few of those communications. More and more church offices and administrators prefer to communicate by email, and there will likely be now an explosive increase in the use of text messaging. In fact, you may have already found that in your own ministry context. Church members will be more accessible to the staff, and the staff more accessible to other people with instant communications that email and text messaging provide, and so you want to teach people how to use that and make that available. Online communication, like email, as well as texting, is often a preferred method of communication for the congregants for it's an immediate answer that they are looking for when they talk to you or communicate with you. They are likely to have a fast response that an email and a text message provides that waiting till the next meeting will not. You do need to remember, though, that some churches are often the last to jump on the technology train. Members of the congregation may not have acquired the technology or don't know how to use the computers or email or text messaging, so you may have to even teach them how to do that. In fact, in one church, when we went electronic, we actually had sessions on teaching the people in the church how to access the church website so that they would be able to find the information that they needed. And while emailing and texting may be cost effective and quick, they may not yet appeal to the masses. So the solution will be to ensure that church offices, pastors, and staff members have the technology resources to communicate with as many constituents as possible who want to receive that communication and reply 21st century style. While older members may not be comfortable with computers and cell phones, younger members today expect information over the internet. They will expect the church, the website, is to provide as much access to their church as a bank website would be to their bank. So to appeal to a younger audience, churches will have to be more technologically savvy. We will actually talk about that in week 12. More pastors will be turning to social networking, like Facebook or Twitter, to communicate with members, especially to communicate and involve younger members. Again, we'll talk about that in week 12. And while this may be a challenge for more traditionally focused pastors, the outcome may also be a more virtual and far-reaching congregation. Social networking is really what communication is evolving into. It does not replace face-to-face communication, but it extends the reach. The printed or mailed via UPS is still the most familiar means of communicating to members, but many members will, in fact, expect church newsletters even to be sent via email. The church needs to prepare to communicate this transition and develop a plan for utilizing this avenue to share information on a regular and consistent basis. The upside of this is that money will be saved in the production and postage of the traditional hard copy, the mailed newsletters. And you could even have colored newsletters that way because it comes out on their printer, not yours. So is your church asking for people to share their email addresses with you? There will still be members who expect printed versions of the newsletter as well, and the quality of the church's database therefore becomes critical in the success of this communication. At one larger church, members can opt in to getting the newsletter electronically by sending their email address to the editor, or otherwise they get it the old-fashioned way. And every time someone subscribes to get the newsletter electronically, church postage costs decrease. Effective fundraising has also become more crucial. It comes as no surprise that major donors, indeed donors in general, who rely on investment income to make donations, may reduce giving. Investment assets have been reduced due to economic downturns, and the congregants who give it to collection plate offerings will likely not increase giving. Churches will need to focus on faith and mission-driven giving rather than low-touch appeals. The churches will also see a swing in existing giving from the more unrestricted to the more restricted. And in a tight economy, donors want to know and make sure that their gifts are going to the program that they support. So churches need to find the right programs to promote and communicate that to the congregation. And donors will always be expecting better fiscal relationship. So if you can be clear about how those finances are being used, they will be more likely to continue to support. I think I have them all here. Excuse me. I want to talk just a little bit now about the internet itself, just a little bit more. With all this new internet, cell phone, and email technology at hand, one of the most important things to remember is the value of meaningful relationships. Because of the increasingly high volume of online communications, human interaction is even more important and significant. Don't stop doing that. Just selectively do it. Congregants will want to continue to depend upon meaningful relationships with pastors and lay leaders, making high-touch interactions imperative to address issues such as fundraising and governance and counseling. Knowing the members of the church leads to better understanding of what is appealing to them. And when a church leader communicates with his or her own members, he or she should know how to appeal to them. To be effective in caring for constituents while the economy is rebuilding itself, churches are more reliant than ever from the support of their constituents. Is our church prepared to do that? Just a few more things I want to say, and I want to make sure I haven't missed a note here in all this. As I'm moving around, I seem to move some pages, but that wouldn't be the first time. Make sure, don't forget that a church office needs volunteers. In fact, it's a very wonderful way for people to get involved in the ministry of the church by doing simple things. In one church, I kept telling my administrative assistant we needed to buy a folding machine. And she said, I don't want to buy a folding machine. I have 8 folding machines. There are 8 ladies who come in every week to fold the bulletins and the newsletters. It's part of their ministry. It's also the way they share together in a small group. I don't want to take that away from them. I don't need to take that away from them. Volunteers can also be trained to be receptionists. They can be trained to answer the phone. They can be trained to even do filing. And the degree to which you can involve volunteers increases the reach of your staff, including your office staff, but also gives them a meaningful way to serve. As to guidelines and policies, I'm going to tell you that administering a church office has become so complex that I'm not even going to attempt to do more than point you to Welch, who is basically encyclopedic in this section of my lecture. He said all I really need to say in there. But I do want to share a couple more things with you. One of the things I do not want to do here also is to give legal advice. Legal advice so often changes. The church needs a good attorney that they can trust and depend upon. Robert Baker and Michael Cooper White in this book, hang on there, Church Administration, have these words of comment to us. They said, another area requiring careful stewarding on the part of the church leaders is the congregation or religious institution's tax-exempt status. In general, federal, state, and local taxes are not levied on the real estate or other assets of an entity granted exemption by virtue of its religious purposes and not-for-profit status, continually referred to as a 501c3 organization as defined by the IRS. All such organizations, however, may engage in activity that goes beyond their fundamental purposes and results in substantial income, which may be regarded by the IRS and other taxing agencies as subject to unrelated business income taxation. Rental or of unused office space to another not-for-profit for a modest fee may not be problematic, but weekday rental of a church parking lot for commercial purposes, generating monthly income in thousands of dollars, is another matter. When considering all such issues of facility rental, for sale activities, and the like, consultation with a certified public accountant, attorney, taxing agency representative, or other expert is essential. If at all possible, seek a written ruling or advice document, which can be helpful if there should be accusations of tax code violations. I can't say that enough. Make sure you have the right representation. Another way to know this is to find a website called churchlawandtax.com that has much important information. The last thing I want to tell you about is ensuring a safe church. I have a post on security, a file on church security that you should read, and to read it carefully. It has good counsel and good advice, and more churches have to provide for security on Sunday mornings and other times, especially when there are children in the building, because unfortunately in our culture, they are targeted. In the Eastern Regional Conference, we operate on what's called the Safe Sanctuary Policies. And the Safe Sanctuary Policies actually is a program where we teach people how to handle abuse, children, all sorts of things that relate to our liability and our responsibility to care for those who are innocent and those who are under care in our midst. I have also attached in the file the Safe Church Manual from our Bear Memorial Church in Roaring Spring. Rachel Neely has prepared that. Rachel Neely Fletcher now is actually the Eastern Regional Conference's trainer in this area, and you will see what you need to know about safe churches there if you don't already know it. Now, I realize this has kind of been a broadside of different ideas and activities and conversations, and a lot of what you're going to need to know is in those files that I gave you. Next week, we're going to go on to dealing with volunteers, which is an area that's a lot easier to focus on. God bless you. Have a good week. Take care.